Welcome to The Hype Within, exploring journeys of authentic leadership and growth. On the show, tech leaders will share their stories of developing their leadership skills and challenges they faced along the way. You'll learn about their approaches to self-reflection and personal growth, and how they've been able to build a foundation of authenticity that has propelled them to success. I'm your host, Hana Jacover, B2B marketing leader turned leadership and executive coach. Are you ready to get hyped up? Let's dive in. Okay, hello leaders. Welcome back to The Hype Within. I am here today with Candice Bristow, and she is a seasoned HR leader who is experienced in building equitable, inclusive, and diverse workplaces, something that we really need like so much of in all spaces, particularly in tech, which is where she has worked recently. And one of our good friends, Kimmy, introduced us. So thanks, Kimmy. Welcome. How are you, Candice?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me today. I've really enjoyed a lot of our conversations prior to this recording. So I'm really happy to share my thoughts and wisdom and advice with your listeners.
Yeah, likewise. And I have learned a lot from Candice in the last few times that we've chatted already. And she's involved in so many amazing organizations. And yeah, she's a wealth of knowledge. So I'm just excited to hear and have you share your insights with the world, or however many listeners we have.
Yeah.
All right. Well, why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about your journey?
Absolutely. Unlike some people, I kind of fell into HR, came out of school and wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I got right into agency life and began doing staffing for companies across the DMV area, tech companies, public sector, a lot of finance and accounting. And then I spent about 5 years or so doing that. And then I moved into contract recruiting. And then I finally made the leap into corporate recruiting and shortly thereafter into management and leadership. So it's been a really great ride. And over the last 5, 6 years, I've really started honing in my craft on the DEI side and got to spend my last 3 years at my former company really building that whole function up from the ground up. So I'm really proud of the work that I did there. And it's still continuing today. And I'm really proud of the people that are still supporting those efforts.
Amazing. And I'm really excited to chat with you about that in a little bit. Once we, learn about who you are a little bit more, we'll dive into some of the DEI efforts that you just talked about. I'm curious, through all of this, what has evolved as your leadership style?
Yeah, that's a great question. I decided to become a leader because I never had leaders that cared about what I wanted to do, what I wanted to learn, how I wanted to grow, and how I could thrive under their tutelage. And so I decided that I would be the leader that I never got, right? I wanted to lead with empathy. I wanted to listen to people and hear their ideas. We may not be able to execute on everything that you bring to the table, but let's talk about it. That's how we innovate. That's how we move forward. And that's how we create new things, by listening to multiple voices, the inclusion piece of it. And so that was very, very important to me as I began my journey as a leader, for sure.
That's great. And we were just talking about how leaders need to learn how to create spaces for people. And it sounds like that's something you really leaned into. And I'll clarify, I literally was like, so many leaders don't know how to create spaces for people. So there you go.
Yeah. I mean, I think we forget that, yes, it is a job. Yes, there is work to be done. There are revenues to be made, products to be sold, services to be sold. But there are people behind all of that. And people come with all kinds of different perspectives and cultures and education and experiences. And all of that is really important to figure out how you make their job work for them and for the company. It's a two-way street. And if you're not leaning into all the dynamics of any of your employees, you're really going to miss out on some really key information for the next major project that's coming down the road, or maybe the future leader that's going to really do wonderful things for that department. So I thought it was just so incredibly important for me to make sure that I had an ear for them. I listened to the request. I tried to map those requests with what the company's goals and needs were as well, and try to make sure that they were had enough resources, enough training, enough education to do that work and be successful and feel really good about it, right? Because you only do well when you're proud about the work that you do. So I think that that's way important. And if the work that we have isn't what's for you, let's figure out how to get you into another career path, probably in the same company potentially. If not, it's okay. But let's find a way to help you transition so you're happy and the company's still getting what they need from you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think too, it speaks to kind of the idea of there's two influences in your life, the people or the things that you're like, I don't want to do that. And the people or the things that you're like, yes, I want to be like that. I want to be that positive ripple effect, which it sounds like you went into that camp, which is fantastic.
I did.
But it also sounds like it stemmed from almost, you said you didn't have leaders who did that for you. So, you saw that and you decided, no, I'm not going to be that kind of leader. And I'm curious, maybe down the road or, recently there's leaders that have created a space where they've really inspired you and influenced you. But through your career journey, where have you pulled influence and inspiration from?
Oh, I have pulled in inspiration from many, many, many leaders, many books. But I would say that my inspiration actually comes from watching my parents in their careers, right? When they come home or we'd be on the phone and they'll talk to me about their day and their employees. My father was very instrumental in setting up mentorships for underrepresented children when he was working at the FDA. And under his leadership, he was able to provide 30, 40 people per year new opportunities. And I really, really love that about him. And the way that he would listen to their needs of the employee and what they're looking to do and the opportunities that he would try to open doors for them, I thought that was really and truly inspiring. I think it's really important to lean on the people that you most respect and that you think, that you care about, because they actually are the ones guiding you through this.
No, I think it was beautiful, beautiful. And I love when people on this show and they reference their parents as their greatest inspiration and influence. And, I hope that for everybody, but that's not always the case. So when you hear those stories, when you hear those stories, it's really inspiring and heartfelt and real. And it's like, that's your world. Like, that's who little Candice was seeing every single day. And that shaped you, which I just think is so beautiful to think about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I know a lot of people they look to, the big companies and the Oprahs of the world and the Michelle Obamas of the world. And I think that they are amazing, inspirational people. Absolutely. It's the people who aren't in the paper every day. It's the people who aren't on Instagram every day that are just doing things behind the scenes that are making opportunities available for people and lending an ear, giving a leg up, supporting them. I think that's really important. Absolutely.
Yeah. That quote, look for the people that are helpers, look for the people that are helping. And it sort of reminds me a little bit of that, like people that are making real everyday impact. And like, I don't know about Oprah. Are we still in with Oprah? I don't know. Not sure, but
Yeah.
everyday people making impact in communities with others, with other everyday people, just normal people making impact, I think is very inspiring to watch.
Right. Exactly. And I think also just reframing. I think a lot of times we often try to mimic what society says you should do, right? In terms of climbing the corporate ladder, be this manager, be this kind of leader. But I think you have to do what you feel is in your heart, in your values, your ethics, how you live your life need to match up with any consulting opportunity, any full-time job or company you work for. Because if they don't sync, it's going to be really hard to do that job well and
Yeah.
be an active member and a productive member in that organization. So it's really important to be aligned with the type of company that you're working with.
Yes. How wonderful would it be if everybody could just take some time to explore their passion and their values and their purpose so we could really lean into that. It breaks my heart every time I think about that. Like, I had the opportunity to do that. I'm very privileged to be able to do that. And I wish that everybody could pause and just spend some time on that. And yeah, it makes me sad that like in our society, that's unacceptable because we have bills to pay. We have things to do.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the truth. I mean, we do, but I think again, if you redefine the constructs of your social life and what it means to be
Mhm.
successful, right? I think that's really important. Like, what is success? And I think the pandemic, George Floyd, Black Lives Matter movement, I think all of these moments in time over the last 4 or 5 years have really reshaped, employer experience and
Mhm.
what you want for your career to be, what your journey is going to be, because now it's no longer just the normal journey. So many people have gone off and started these passion projects that have now become, their day jobs, right?
Mhm.
That's how they make their living. That's how they support their families. And they are so much happier for it too. It's not easy, but it's so much better for them in terms of the way they want to live the lives they want to live.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But it's not easy because you're so aligned with what you believe that you're supposed to be doing and where you can actually fulfill your potential. It's worth it. It's worth every minute, every tear, every, second where you're like, I'm burning out. It's worth it for sure. At least maybe that's just what I'm just gonna keep telling myself that.
It is worth it. I mean, I've been looking in the market for probably about 4 or 5 months now. I was recently laid off from my company, and I've started really looking into my own passions about like travel and design. And so I've really been delving into that. And sometimes there's this imposter syndrome. You're like, should I get back into HR and DEI? And I really have a passion for that work because it's what I've done my whole career. And it's
Mhm.
not what I want to lose, but I also feel like I've put these other things on the back burner for so long that I kind of want to bring them up to the forefront a little bit more too. And trying to figure out how to do that balance is really something that I'm working on and it's super tricky. And that whole imposter syndrome comes into play all the time, all the time.
Yeah.
I'm better at giving advice to people than I am taking my own advice.
We all are. Oh my gosh, we all are because we're so aware of them. We're aware of them, we're working on them, and we've probably looked at all the resources and we understand what that sphere looks like and so it's easier to talk about it, but it's hard to take action and actually do it for yourself. Yeah, like I talk about burnout all the time. And let me tell you, the times where I am on the brink of burnout, where I'm like, why didn't you listen to your own advice this week, Hana?
Very true. I often feel that way. I'm really big with putting up little post-it notes all around.
Mhm.
Just like, you need to listen to this, or you're enough, or you can do this,
Yeah,
got this. So I love putting little notes around here just to remind myself when I'm feeling like, I can't go any further. But yes, you really can.
me too. Me too. I do post-it notes and just little mementos, reminders of, power, even if it's not a post-it that you write, a picture or token. I think it's important to have those all around your house and every day where you can see them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a mirror right as I walk out my front door and it says, I am enough. So every day I
I
go
love
out,
that.
I look in the mirror before I walk out the door. It just gives me that extra boost, right? Before I go out
Mhm.
in the world.
Oh, I love that so much. And even if you don't say it out loud, you're probably reading it and subconsciously you're saying it. And so you're
Abs-
saying it every single time you walk out the door, which is so cool.
Every single time I go out the door. every
That's
single
a great little hack. Okay, so you mentioned like this balance of thinking about your personal endeavors and passions and having to balance that with your professional growth.
Yeah.
I think that this is an area that so many people are challenged by. What is that balance? And everybody that I talk to, it's taken them to the point where they're in the C suite. Like that is the length of their career where they're in the C suite and they've just now kind of figured it out. They've
Yeah.
just now figured out what they need to maintain that balance of personal development and professional development. So I know you said you're working on it, but what are some of the things that maybe come to mind when you think about that balance that's important to you?
Yeah, definitely. I think about things like what's most important to me in this moment, right? Where am I now and where do I want to be? Like, where's my end goal? And I try to
Mhm.
make sure that I understand like where the things that I want to work on, the things, the person that I want to be. And I set up small goals that I can attain over a period of time. That way I don't inundate myself. I find that what
Mhm.
happens is that often we have this like long list of, oh, I need to go do this. I got to read this. I got to understand this. I got to go call these people. I need to update my resume. I have to, it's just so many things that are happening, not to mention what's going on in your own personal life, in your home life. But I find that if I just say, these three things I'm going to get done today, these are the things. And if I get them done, I have been productive. I have done what I needed to do. And I feel like
Mhm.
it moves the needle a bit, right? It's when you just like, I've got to get 20 things done today. And you only look up and it's 5 o'clock and you've only gotten three things done. And you yourself up a bit because I am notorious for doing that. I've had to just scale that back and say, just these three things. If these three things get done, your day is successful.
That's such great advice. I think that we trip over the to-do lists. We like the idea of them because our brain likes to check off the little box and we get that little dopamine hit. But in reality, it's not a long-term solution and it's not something that makes us feel good in the end. It makes you feel good in the moment. But if you just focused on these three things, then at the end of the day, it's that delayed gratification. We have such a problem with that as humans.
Do we ever? Do we ever? I think that's the hardest thing about being a human is that again, we're going back to social constructs. There's this immediate gratification that we expect to have. You do this one thing and this is supposed to happen. And again, this is something I'm still learning. I'm still absorbing every single day. Success and your goals and future idealistic things are done by small incremental things done consistently over time. And I have to remind myself of that. I can't just bang out something and submit it and be like, ah, this is the award-winning thing. I'm going to make $1 million off of it. No, I mean, it takes people years to get to their end goal sometimes. So I always remember that, the larger goals, the big, this is what I want my life to be. It takes time and it takes baby steps. And you just have to remember if you get those three baby steps done every day, you're heading towards the finale and the finish line.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah, that's fantastic. People have these huge goals and they're overwhelmed by them. And I mean, it's exactly what you're talking about. What's a baby step? What's a baby step that you can take towards this instead of thinking about, oh, wow, this goal is so overwhelming. Like, how am I ever going to get there? I don't know where to start. Well, yeah, obviously, because it's way too big, it's way too grand, and
Mhm.
you're here. And yeah, you just got to put one foot in front of the other.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's what happens as you progress up through to the C-suite. Now, not only are you looking at the strategy for a whole department, right? But now you're responsible for all of these lives and all of these
Hmm.
beings with all their own issues and problems. And it can be very daunting and very, very overwhelming, right? And so
Hmm.
I think it's really important to again, this is why I say it's so important to listen to the people on your team, right? Spread out the work. You can't own everything. That's another thing. Give people the opportunity to shine. Pass
Hmm.
down the torch. It does not make you less of a manager. It doesn't mean that you aren't shining just as bright. The fact that your people can do well and other people are raving about the people on your team means you're doing something right. And I think
Yeah.
some managers get a little intimidated by that when they hear all the praises about their employees from other people, but they're not necessarily hearing it about themselves. But the higher you go, the less you're going to hear that, right? That's
Yeah.
so your joy and your success and satisfaction with being in that role should come from the fact that your team is like nailing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's shifting that motivator to with external validation to this like internal feeling of joy and excitement and knowing that you're having that impact, which I think is huge for people. I think all leaders should maybe work on the agency side because, you get used to being behind the curtain. That's where I started my career. And
Mhm.
you just get so used to it. Like, you are the one rolling up your sleeves, developing the strategy, doing all of the hard work, doing the presentation, making sure that that team can embrace whatever it is that you're trying to get them to implement. And if it's successful, you don't get anything you don't get, I mean, you might get like a one-on-one thank you, but even sometimes it's like on to the next thing. And you get very used to the joy that I experienced, or like my motivator was knowing that my client knew how to bring something to their stakeholder, present it, execute on a program and be successful and understand the results and the data. And that was where I got my joy. It wasn't from seeing their campaigns be successful and then them giving credit to our agency. That just doesn't happen.
Right, I get that for sure. Yeah, when you know that whatever you've put out in the world through yourself or through your team, that the recipients of that information or that scenario, when they come back to you and say, "Wow, you made me look at things different. You made
Mhm.
it differently. I have a new respect for this," or "I really like that idea and it made me think of some other things." That to me is definitely a motivator. Why
Yeah.
do your own personal pleasure? I think life is all about giving versus always receiving.
Mhm. Yeah, totally agree. Even just this conversation, it brings me to think about just the interconnectedness that we have as humans. I believe that's really our purpose, is to help others to be in spaces where we are contributing to healing or growth, or everybody has their own way of that, their own skills that they bring to that, but that is really why we're all here. And it's not about the external validation. All of that is fake. It's all fake. I ask this to people all the time, like, do you know, by yourself, can you generate a feeling of love?
Mm,
Instead of just thinking about love, can you generate a feeling of love for yourself
mm,
within your body and
yeah,
feel it within your body? And it's hard to get to that point. It took me years to be able to just like generate that feeling or
yeah,
emotion of love within my body. When you get to that point, you don't care about so much of the external, and you're grateful for the exchanges that you have with other people, that you can also receive that feeling of love. It's just more meaningful. Yeah. But anyways, I went off on a tangent. I'm sorry.
no, I think it's a great tangent because it dovetails very well into like just the work from an HR perspective, from a DEI perspective, and even like as I'm, branch out into other things like being a travel advisor. The want and the need to have people like you and come and look at all the things that you're doing because of social media, right? Is
Mhm.
That's an extrinsic thing, right? But that's not really what we're hoping for. We're hoping that we can provide you with something that's going to make you feel happier, empower you, enlighten you, make you change course on something that you needed to change course on.
Mhm.
And I think that's the good and the bad of being on socials, right? Is that, you like that love from everybody else, but really it's like, no, I want to teach you something. I want you to be aware of something. And the more people that see it and have that awareness, maybe and hopefully the better people we can be, whether it's a leader, whether it's a parent, whether it's a sibling, whatever it may be. But that's the hope.
Yeah, which is a good hope to have. Everybody hang on to it. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about your DEI work and get into that. And one thing that I wanted to call out and have a discussion around is just like at the time that we're recording this, there is a lot of violence, a lot of distress in the world. There's a lot of innocent humans dying at the hands of the military industrial complex. I mean, we could talk all day about like the systems or the structures and like all of that, but I feel like there have been so many moments in my career where I've been personally affected by some of the global events or even the nationwide events, you know, thinking about George Floyd, really when BLM picked up, when you started seeing companies make statements and post pictures, and we started seeing support groups being formed, you know, but I individually, and I hear this from others all the time, particularly if they are Black or person of color, I didn't feel supported in those moments. And I was really disappointed by the leadership that I was, you know, currently at the employer that I was at. And again, like I hear that from others all the time. And then COVID, right? Even during COVID, like how traumatic COVID was for people and kids home, everybody's home, trying to learn, trying to work. Like just this last, I don't know, what has it been, 5 years? And now we're at this point where I don't think anybody's healed from that trauma, right? And here we are in a place where it's compounding. There's even more, and there's more violence. We have this occupation in Gaza, and it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to watch what's going on in the world. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm watching people complain about leads and SDRs, and I'm like, what? This is what we're talking about, because people shut down, right? They shut down and they go numb and they're just like on this autopilot. And I just want to talk about, as a leader, how do we face these moments? How do we create spaces for team members to express and feel and grieve in these times? Because I don't see a lot of that happening right now, and it's kind of disappointing.
Yeah. I can only speak about my own experiences when things are happening with the pandemic and George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. And, you know, I was fortunate to be with an organization that allowed me the space that I needed. Some people had children, and multiple young children, and they're all at home. Everybody's trying to work, and it just became too much. And so the company I was with just happened to let people, you know, work part-time for like the 6 months just to get acclimated, right? Because it's a whole new lifestyle, right? Everybody's piled in the house on top of each other. Got to worry about computers for the kids. They're not in school. What are you doing with them? Because they're not going to daycare anymore. And now you're trying to deal with the dog and the children and work. And it was just so much. So I was very fortunate to be with an organization that was very compassionate about that. I've had other friends who weren't. It was same thing day in, day out, no space to actually have conversations around like how things in the world are impacting them, how their day-to-day lives are impacting them, and how it does impact the work, and what do you need to make sure that you can still do your work and be productive, but to get the space and the time you need to heal and be there for your own family. That's been a hard juggling act for a lot of companies, I think. Really hard juggling act. But I think what's proven is that people are resilient, right? And they're still productive. People were still productive throughout the entire pandemic. So it's just a matter of reimagining how people can do the work from all different spaces. And then out, like, how do we still have this connection, right? How do we still be able to connect as human beings on a one-to-one level and not always just be about the work?
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes I can't help but wonder, were people still as productive because that's just how we've all been socialized, and our definition of productivity is output based and money based, and would we still be considered productive if we were given the space to heal and grieve? And you know what I mean?
I think so. I mean, at the end of the day, I always, it's funny. I feel like people got more work done working from home than they did
Yeah.
in office because literally most people are in office, let's say 9 hours a day. There's the, hey, let's go get coffee. Hey, let's go get
Mhm.
lunch. Hey, let's stop in the hall and talk for 20 minutes because you're on a totally different floor and I never see you. So, like, between meetings and the actual work being done, it's probably like a few hours a day, Whereas
Mhm.
if people are working from home where they may not work a normal 9 to 5, they find that productive space, that time that's free for them where their mind is clear and they're able to get the space and energy,
Mhm.
just bang out the work that's necessary. So I think it just changed how we did it, right? And I think employers and companies began to see it doesn't have to be the typical because people will still be productive.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm curious because in your DEI work and like through all of this, I'm sure you had leaders come to you and be like, what do we do? Like how do we approach this? How do we create spaces? How do we keep our employees productive through all of this? Yeah, like, and that's really interesting to me because I feel like there's this foundation of DEI work that has to be done and things, processes, and things that you have to put in place. But then shit happens, like George Floyd, he got murdered. That happened. That exploded. What's going on right now in Gaza, and these moments happen. And so you have to have some sort of plan or some sort of moment where you pause and you say, what do we do right now for both of those foundationally and for these moments that strike us and they just sort of happen and they're in our face? What are the recommendations to make sure that we're not just leaning into kind of like the performance and the buzzwords and keep working, keep being productive, like actually helping our humans.
Yeah. I mean, I think first and foremost, it starts with your benefits, right? Do you have the right benefits to support your workforce? And that means,
Mm.
are they able to go see a therapist if they need it? Do they have coaching available if they need it? I think it's very important that if the right benefits aren't in place for people to take advantage of them, that's first and foremost.
Mhm.
Second, it's socializing all the time. If you need space, take it. Talk to your managers, leaders, give your people space and have an open door so they feel comfortable to come to you to say, I'm having a moment and I need some time to get myself together. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, how can I help you with that? What's going
Mhm.
on with your work? How can we do some different things? How much time do you need? How do you think we can structure this so that you're still able to be engaged with what's happening, but still get the space you need? I mean, it's these types of it's like just really frank conversations that you have to have, almost as like they're your friend. I know people aren't friends, but we have to treat people with respect and with courtesy and ask them what they need to be productive and and get
Mhm.
done.
I think one of the greatest gifts that your employer can give is that space to do whatever you need to do to process, to heal, whatever it is. But then I also think we need continued conversation. It can't just be like, take this space this one time and we're not going to talk about it ever again,
Oh, as a leader, it's like anything else. Like if they have a work product, you're following up on that work product on your one-on-ones. You should be having one-on-ones every week with your people. And you're following not only are you following up on their work product or things that are happening, but I also think it's a good time to check in to say, how you doing? How's life?
Mhm.
You know, things still good with you? You okay? Anything going on at home that's different? Is your space right? Are you getting the information you need to do your job effectively? These are the kind of conversations that we should have in our one-on-ones. And I know it touches a little bit on the personal, but again, we are humans, we are people. It has to
Yeah.
be a little bit personal, right? It can't just be work, 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 work. So yeah, I think that it's important that during those one-on-ones, if there was a situation last week, we were touching base every couple weeks so they're out of that. And then maybe a couple months later, you follow back up, you remember it. When you remember it, people appreciate you. They're loyal to you, that you actually
Mhm.
remember your circumstance and you remember to follow up and say, hey, how are things going? Are things okay? Is there anything I can do? Are you still happy in the role, or is something going on that we need to make some adjustments to? Just ask
Mhm.
a question. Sometimes you may not be able to do anything. You just can't, for whatever reason. But the fact that you asked and that you're trying to brainstorm on ways to provide solutions and resources to that person goes a long way. Goes a really, really long.
Yeah. Maybe this ties into your experience of building that DEI function from the ground up. But what about some of those foundational things where, sometimes it's not in our best interest to go away and just like put a blanket over our head? I think that human connection and discussion, those conversations are healing. And that's sort of how we're supposed to heal, right? Like, obviously, you need time to feel your emotions and do some internal processing, but then coming back and having conversations where everybody is sort of on the same page and aligned with, I don't know, whether it's a social movement or just thinking about how we're looking at DEI and what that means. In your experience building this function, were you creating spaces in organizations where people could go and have those conversations too?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is why we have employee resource groups. People call them all
Mhm.
kinds of things, affinity groups, ESG groups. But I think it's important that there are those spaces where people who have, like in culture, like in race, like in philosophies, like in views,
Mhm.
allies, supporters, being able to come together in a space and just have really candid, open conversations about how they're feeling, things they're seeing, questions they want to ask other people to get their feedback, because that keeps you connected to not only the people that you have to work with every day, because again, it makes them look like not just a work person. They are a colleague now, right? They're not just a person across the hallway that you have to go to for that data point, right? For your presentation. They are somebody that you care about, is somebody that you respect, and hopefully you like them. And you're able to share these really intimate experiences with them about how you're feeling about what's going on in the world today and how
Mhm.
you feel and how it makes you show up for work, right? Because all these things impact how we show up every single day,
Yeah.
whether it's at your job, whether it's with your family, with your friends, even coming to this video today, how we show up. And I think when you have those groups, specifically have those groups, it keeps people connected to the company. It says
Mhm.
that the company cares because it's giving them people, resources, time, and space to talk about things that aren't just work related, because it's
Yeah.
not always about the work. And I think as a leader, you have to give your employees that time and space to participate in those things. It helps them with their growth. It helps them with their mental, and it also helps them get to know other people across the company that they may not always work with, right? And it might
Mhm.
to new opportunities, for them to try out and maybe stay with the company when they may have been thinking about leaving, right? So I always encourage employee resource groups, because what other forms do we have at a company for people to come together as groups and share in that kind of fashion?
Yeah. Yeah. I hope we start seeing more of just like that human side from organizations and having it just more blended together, because you mentioned earlier, like some things are so personal in a one on one, but like we're people. I'm not going to separate who I am at work and who I am at home. And I did that for a long time. I'm sure you did too. Like we all have this
Yeah,
feeling.
for sure.
Yeah, like I hope we move into a space where that's just the norm, where, okay, we know we're going to have a week that is full of very different discussions. It's not going to be about the product release, it's not going to be about the newsletter. Like, we're going to discuss what's going on in the world because we want to make sure that people are connecting and healing, learning, and just giving the space to be productive in that sort of way, in that sort of human growth kind of way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's what has made life in the work, like this remote hybrid type of working, very interesting because, now we have to talk and connect through cameras. And
Mhm.
now that's like the normal thing to do. Everybody's used to it now.
Yeah.
Before, it was so scary. People were like, "Is my makeup right? Are my glasses right? Is my hair right? What's going on?" But now it's like every day for us, and we've learned to adapt. This is why humans are so wonderful because we continue to adapt to our scenarios, right? We have
Mhm.
or we will die, right? It's called survival. So as long as there's still that ability to interact and connect an emotional, intimate way, in a personal way, even with colleagues and managers and leaders, I think it's incredibly important. It's not, these are the new water cooler moments, right? These are the new coffee break moments. And I think we should take full advantage of them.
Mm.
And also, I think leaders need to make sure too that when they do have time with their people, that they let them know flat out, I just want to shoot shit with you. I just want to get to know you as a person. I don't
Yeah.
want about work right this second. Let's just enjoy it, right? You don't have to get super personal, but just hobbies, interests, even if it's interest. I mean, anything other than the day-to-day product launch or what's going on with that presentation.
Yes, yeah, and it builds that trust, that psychological safety, and it also, like, cues in that leader to, "Oh, I should reach out to this person today because I know that they're passionate about this thing. I know, something about their family or something that they're connected to." So, like, you already are being proactive because you're thinking about that person because you know them better because you've taken the time to actually build that relationship.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
I think back to a person that I managed for about 3 or 4 years, and we had a rough road. We really did because they had been socialized in one way of managing and thinking. And I came in and I completely changed it up. And they're like, I don't know what's going on. I was like, well, I need you to think outside the box, right? You and I are both black and white thinkers. So we both have to think out of the box, right? And not make it too complicated for everybody else. We have to make sure whatever we're doing and creating, we're going to get people to buy in. We simplify things and we don't make it so analytical. And it took her such a long time to like get through that. But once she understood it, and then she got more confidence. And when I left, it's like, you have to apply for my job. You are going to be an amazing manager because you've learned so much. And it took a minute, but she finally applied and she got the job and she's doing a fabulous job and has already been promoted. So,
Amazing.
yeah, you just have to like hold on, like lean into people. When people are passionate about something, even though they might be going down the wrong track with the passion, if you could just give them a little bit of room to like course correct and get back on and kind of look at things differently, it's amazing the type of people that will be built from that and how they will continue their own journeys. And it makes you feel really good to see how they're
Mhm.
progressing and how they're doing.
Yes. Oh my gosh, the best feeling. And that goes back to that motivation, right? It feels good to watch people that you've connected with and worked with to be successful. And that's that like intrinsic motivation that we all need to get to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, to me, it's like, why do the work? I mean, we all need a paycheck. Yes. Not, without question, we all need a paycheck. But if you're going to lead people, don't do it for yourself. You got to lead people because you want something better for them.
Mic drop. Well, I know we are getting close to our time, but this has been a lovely discussion. I'm wondering, what resource or experience or advice would you like to leave the listeners with? These are leaders, up and coming leaders who are high performers and they want to do the job, but they want to show up as themselves.
I would say be authentic to yourself. Know who you are, know what you stand for, know what your values are. And if you can follow those, I think they don't steer you wrong, right? They take you where you want to go. That doesn't mean it won't be hard. It doesn't mean that you won't meet with resistance. Doesn't mean that you won't meet with setback either. But if you keep pushing ahead, eventually you will get to where you want to be. I also say you can't do it alone. You can't do it in a bubble. You've got to network. You've got to talk to people. I am a true believer that it's always about who you know, because people have so much information and so many resources that they don't even know about. So trying to do it on your own is not good. I say the more people you talk to and you get information from them about the sectors they're in and the work that they're doing, and it helps you kind of define more about what you like and what you want to be and how you want to get there. And you never know, those people might be a reference for you for the next job or have that next job opportunity for you. So I always say, open yourself up to lots of different networking, open up your heart, definitely open up your heart, lead with empathy, and show people respect.
Love it. Wonderful advice. I so appreciate you, and I have valued our new connection and our conversations now and previous to this, and I can't wait to have more, and I wish you all the best, and thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much, Hana. I really appreciate it. This has been wonderful, and yes, I love our connection and want to continue with it, and I wish you so much success with your new endeavor and with the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. I hope you walk away with something empowering that you can take into your own leadership journey. Are you a high-performing executive looking to take your career to the next level? Or maybe you're an emerging leader who wants to develop the skills you need to advance in your role and show up authentically. Or maybe you're experiencing burnout and struggling to find a better work-life balance. Whatever your situation is, one-on-one coaching can help you achieve your personal and professional goals. If you're interested in experiencing the power of coaching for yourself, head on over to hypehousecoaching.com/start coaching now, where you can set up a one-on-one leadership and executive coaching intro session for free. Remember, the only hype that really matters is the hype within.